Very good morning, students. Myself, Professor V Hirewadeyar. So today I am going to teach you the concept of micro teaching. So before to start the micro teaching, let me discuss about the concept of teaching. What is actually teaching? What do you mean by teaching? Teaching is not merely imparting knowledge to students, nor merely giving advice. Teaching is not a passive information to the students. Teaching is not sharing one's own experience. I think you understand. So teaching is not merely imparting any knowledge to the students and not merely just giving advice. Teaching is not a passing information to the students. Teaching is not a sharing one's own experience. Then what is teaching? Just believe that teaching is an establishing a harmonious relationship between teacher, student and subject. So these are three portions. I say that it's just simply establishing a very harmonious relationship between teacher, subject and even student. So teaching is the activity of facilitating learning. Facilitating learning. What is actually, in my last period for B.Ed third semester, I just said that the teacher is a facilitator. Teacher is a facilitator. So teaching means you are just binding a good relation. And it is a process between teacher, student and finally subject. Just I am here to teach you very brief concept of teaching. Just I am giving one or two definitions, that's all. When we have just a concept in the teaching, there is another process is called learning. Wherever there is a teaching, there is a learning. One who teaches is a teacher. One who learning is a learner. So what is learning? Change in behavior brought by an activity, training or few experiences. Mind it. Because I never say that whenever the question is there, actually what is learning? Learning means, because we never say that change in behavior brought about by activity, training or experience by teacher. No. It is the process. It's a process of what do you call that? A learning a concept about by an activity, training or experiences. Of course, we can say that learning never ends. When it starts, when it begins, it never ends. So that means learning is not a ending process. Learning is not an ending process. Anyone who stops learning is old. Anyone who keeps learning stays young. How? Actually, it looks funny, but reality is there. When you stop to learning, of course, it's old. One who keeps learning stays young. Actually, how learning happens? How learning happens? Knowledge acquired by study. Whatever you study in the sense, just you go through a textbook, go through a concept, even you should go through a circumstance, because we always never learn by books. Sometime environment, our circumstance, these will teach us. So that's why it's acquired by even circumstances. And of course we can say that generated in an environment where the interaction between teachers, students and content. Of course we can say that some content sense, you have some textbook or a concept, but an environment has to create. That's what I'm telling, where actually interaction. Yes, Interaction in the sense, it's not a single process that one teacher just can stand and simply he teaches. No allowances to any students or a pupil who can just stand up and ask anything or discuss anything. That means what we say that it is a process in a very the way of discussion just we are following that generated in an environment where actually simple interaction between the teachers and even students, especially on content. So how learning happens? There is a famous saying, I hear, I forget. I see, I remember. I do, I understand. Great thing. I hear, I forget. I see, I remember. I do, I understand. Purely an activity based name. That means we remember 20% of what we hear, 30% of what we see, and 50% of what we see and hear, and finally 90% of what we see, hear, and even do mind it. It means endless process. So when we think about the teaching skills, activities and behaviors of teachers that facilitate learning in students are called teaching skills. Activities and even some behaviors of teachers that facilitate learning in students are called teaching skills. So that means without teaching skills, you cannot make a teaching. So teaching skills are overt behavior of the teacher that can be observed, measured and even modified. That's why I'm just telling in Bloom's taxonomy. I think dear students, it's for especially for B.Ed first semester. I don't know whether actually have you studied the taxonomy of Bloom's. We can say in Kannada Jnanatmaka Valaya. But maybe in your next period, the same concept will be taught. So you have that some called, there is a concept in Bloom's taxonomy, synthesis. That synthesis is based on the same, what I am telling, overt behavior of a teacher that can be observed, measured and modified. Modified in the sense modification. Synthesis in the sense, whatever you want, you can keep it. Whatever you don't want, please don't delete it. You just keep besides. If you want to just change, modify it. So even teaching skills include introducing the lesson, explaining concept, demonstrating, experiments, feedback, questioning, drawing, figures, writing on board something what actually we are calling as a BB work, using teaching aids and other means of communications. We have these things, lessons, demonstration, explaining concepts, everything, I told it, experiments, feedback, questioning, everything. Because as I just told in my earlier class, that's called a discussions between teaching and learning. When we have a teaching skills, we have 6 concepts, one by one, just I will explain. 1, introducing lessons. 2, skill of explanation. 3, skill of probing questions. 4, skill of stimulus variation. 5, skill of using teaching aids. And 6, skill of closure. That means you have these 6, which are very important concept in teaching, especially in the classroom environment. One is, once again, I shall be pardoned once again, there are 6. First one is introducing skills. Second one is skill of explanation. Third one is skill of probing questions. And the fourth one is called skill of stimulus. And the fifth one is called skills of using teaching aids, what we are actually calling as TLM. Nowadays it's called TLM, teaching learning materials. We can also say that teaching aids. And the sixth one is called skill of closure. That means you are closing portion. So teaching skills, introduction of skills. The first one is called introduction of skills. Judge the present stage of knowledge and skill of trainees. Just you can observe it. Link between introduction and main points. Now actually you have that point. You have brought some points to teach the student. Just to link between. Introduction in the sense we can say that motivating concept. Attract attention at the start of the lesson. Just of course. The very beginning part of the lesson is attention at the start of the lesson. See, you have a great attractor in the classroom. I am telling about a teacher who can simply motivate the students and just simply he drag the attention of students towards the lesson. He is a great motivator. In the skills of explanation, elaborate clearly, just you are getting. Use illustration, that means few by examples. Cognitive links. I just say in my earlier class, cognitive links, that means I remembered, I think that concept is Bloom's taxonomies that called cognition. We can say in Kannada, Jnanatmaka Valaya. Meaningful repetition. And compare and contrast. That means you need to observe it. When actually you are there in the concept means you need to observe it. Just you are comparing it. And finally you contrast that. And the skill of probing questions. Prompting. Seeking further information. That whatever the information you now have, it's not sufficient. Because you just understand. Because now you started to think about the climate of a classroom, actually what is going on. Refocusing, redirecting, increasing critical awareness. Because it's a great challenge to a teacher, mind it. And the skills of stimulus variation, great concept. Movement, gestures, your body behaviors. See, but I never say that it's a dramatical concept or you are saying some teacher is doing drama. Nothing. Teachers' movement, students' movements, teachers' talk, students' talk, oral visual switching, just voice modulation, just rising up and down, sustaining. For example, I ask a question to you. There is one question. If a student has come to school without doing homework, the teacher asked all students to show the homeworks, that is home assignment. One of the boy stood up and just said, "No teacher, I did not do my homework yesterday." So the question here is, when the teacher asks a question in a classroom, how should be a question? That means a question should be like a question. Because we never say that. What is your name? Question mark. My name is XYZ full point. We never say that. Because punctuations can only be understood through what? Voice modulations. Your punctuations cannot be said that you are using it. That means voice modulation. So immediately what actually the teacher has to ask to that boy? So why did you not do the homework? That means the raising of a sentence, rising in the sense, the sentence is not normal because always answers are normal. Why did you do not your homework? No teacher, I had been to market with my mom. Answer is very simple. That means voice modulation. Especially for art students, you can understand the modulation, especially in a historical view. Some you are calling as history. ಐತಿಹಾಸಿಕ ಘಟನೆಗಳು ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೇವೆ. ಯಾಕಂದರೆ ಯಾವ ಭಾವನೆಗಳು ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ಒಂದು ಪಾಠವನ್ನು ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಒಬ್ಬ ಶಿಕ್ಷಕನಿಂದ ಸಾಧ್ಯವೇ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಭಾವನೆಗಳು ಅಂದರೆ ಏನು ಅಂತ, ಭಾವನೆಗಳು ಅಂದರೆ ಹೇಳಿದ್ನಲ್ಲ, ಎಲ್ಲೋ ಒಂದು ಕಡೆ ಬೋರ್ಗಲ್ಲ ಮೇಲೆ ನೀರು ಸುರಿದಂತೆ ಸರ್ವಜ್ಞ ಅಂತ ಎಲ್ಲೋ ಒಂದು ಕಡೆ ಪದ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳ್ತಿದ್ರೆ, ಸಾರೋಟ್ ಇಂಟರ್ಪ್ರಿಟೇಷನ್, ನಾನು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳ್ತಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಹಾಗೆ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಒಂದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ, ಯಾಕಂದರೆ ನನಗನ್ಸುತ್ತೆ ನೀವೆಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಮಾತೃಭಾಷೆ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿದೆ, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತೃಭಾಷೆ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತೀರಿ ಅಂತ. ಯಾಕಂದರೆ ನನಗೆ ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ನಲ್ಲಿಗಿಂತ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂಚೂರು ಹೇಳಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಬೇರೆ ರೀತಿ ಆಸ್ಪದ ಆಗ್ತದೆ ಅಂತ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ, ಯಾಕಂದರೆ ಉಳಿದ ಸಾಮಾನ್ಯರು ಬೋರ್ಗಲ್ಲ ಮೇಲೆ ನೀರು ಸುರಿದಂತೆ ಸರ್ವಜ್ಞ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಅದನ್ನೇ ಒಬ್ಬ ಶಿಕ್ಷಕ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ರೀತಿ ಹೇಳ್ತಾನೆ, ಏನಂದರೆ ಕೇವಲ ಬೋರ್ಗಲ್ಲ ಮೇಲೆ ನೀರು ಸುರಿಯುವುದರಿಂದ, ಅಂದರೆ ಅದರ ಅರ್ಥ ಏನು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೇನು, ಸುಮ್ಮನೆ ಮೇಲಿಂದ ನೀರು ಸುರಿಯೋದ್ರಿ ಎದಕ್ಕೆ ಉಪಯೋಗ ಬಂತು ಅಂತ ಕೇಳ್ದಂಗೆ ಅಂತ. ಆದರೆ ಒಂದು ಪರಂಪರೆ ಹೀಗಿದೆ, ಯಾವ ಒಂದೆರಡು ಮಳೆಗಳು ಸರಿದು ಹೋದ ಮೇಲೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಮನೆಯ ಮೇಲ್ಛಾವಣಿ ಐತಲ್ಲ, ಆ ಮನೆಯ ಮೇಲಿನ ಹರಿದ ನೀರುಗಳು ನಾವು ಹರಿನಾಳಿಗೆ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ, ಹರಿಯುವಂಥ ಹರಿನಾಳಿಗೆ, ಅಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಕೆಳಗಡೆ ಬೀಳ್ತಾವೆ. ಆ ಪೈಪ್ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ, ಪೈಪಿಂದ ನೀರು ಬೀಳ್ತಾವೆ ಕೆಳಗೆ. ಬಿದ್ದ ಮೇಲೆ ಕೆಳಗಡೆ ಇರುವಂಥ ಕಲ್ಲು ಅಂತ ಏನು ಕರಿತೀವಿ, ಕಲ್ಲು ಇಟ್ಟಿರ್ತೀವಿ ಯೂಶ್ವಲಿ ನೋಡ್ರಿ, ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಮಣ್ಣಿಗೆ ಒಂದು ಕಲ್ಲು ಇಟ್ಟಿರ್ತಾರೆ, ಕಲ್ಲು ಮೇಲೆ ಬೆಳೆ ನೀರು ಅಂತೇಳಿ. ಆ ಕಲ್ಲು ನೀರು ಅದು ಹೆಂಗಿರುತ್ತೆ ಅಂದರೆ, ನೀರು ಬಿದ್ದು ಒಂದು ರೌಂಡ್ ಶೇಪ್ನ ಸೌದು ಬಿಡ್ತೈತಿ. ಹಾಗಾದರೆ ಕಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ಮನಸ್ಸಿಲ್ಲವೇನು? ನಾನು ಹೇಳೋದು, ಈ ಉದಾಹರಣೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರಸ್ತುತ ಇದಾವೆಲ್ಲೋ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ, ಬಟ್ ಈ ಪ್ರಸ್ತಾವನೆಗಳಿದಾವೆ ನೋಡ್ರಿ. ಅಂದರೆ ಒಂದು ವರ್ಗ ಕೋಣೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ನೀವು ಪ್ರಸ್ತುತಪಡಿಸ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥದ್ದು, ಉದಾಹರಣೆಗೆ ಆ ಭಾವಗಳು, ಆ ಭಾವನೆಗಳು, ಆ ಒಂದು ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮನಸ್ಸಿನಲ್ಲಿ ತೋರಿಸ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಂದು ಈ ಏರಿಳಿತಗಳು ನೀವು ನಿಮ್ಮ ಬಾಯ ಮೂಲಕ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಆ ಗೆಸ್ಚರ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲ ಮೇಲೆ ಹೇಳ್ತಿದ್ದೆ, ಏನಂದರೆ ಸಮ್ ಸ್ವಿಚಿಂಗ್ ಲೈಕ್ ಔರಲ್ ವಿಜುವಲ್, ತಮ್ಮ ಕೈಗಳನ್ನು ಮೇಲೆ ಕೆಳಗೆಲ್ಲೋ ಮಾಡಿ ಶಿಕ್ಷಕರು ತೋರಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಯಾಕಂದರೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸಮಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಶಿಕ್ಷಕರು, ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಎವ್ರಿ ಟೈಮ್ ಟೀಚರ್ ಕೆನಾಟ್ ಶೋ ಟೀಚಿಂಗ್ ಏಡ್ಸ್, ಸಮ್ ಟೈಮ್ ಹಿ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಸ್ವಿಚ್ ಔರಲ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಇವನ್ ವಿಜುವಲ್ ಸ್ವಿಚಿಂಗ್, ಸಮ್ ಚೇಂಜಸ್ ಥ್ರೂ ಆ್ಯಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಸಮ್, ಏನಂದರೆ ಈಗ ನಾವು ನಮ್ಮ ಹ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಓವರ್ ಜಸ್ಟ್ ವಿ ಆರ್ ಶೋಯಿಂಗ್ ಇಟ್, ಮೇಲಿಂದ ಕೆಳಗಡೆ ಏನೋ ಈ ಥರ ಮಾಡಿ ಜಸ್ಟ್ ವಿ ಆರ್ ಶೋಯಿಂಗ್ ಇಟ್. ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಎಲ್ಲವನ್ನು ಅಬ್ಸರ್ವ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂತ. ಸ್ಟೂಡೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಅಬ್ಸರ್ವ್ ಯು ಕೇರ್ಫುಲಿ, ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ದ ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಒನ್ ಇಸ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಸ್ಕಿಲ್ ಆಫ್ ಯೂಸಿಂಗ್ ಟೀಚಿಂಗ್ ಏಡ್ಸ್. ವೆರಿ ಸಿಂಪಲ್, ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಯು ಆರ್ ಮೇಕಿಂಗ್ ಇಟ್ ಮೋರ್ ಸಿಂಪಲ್. ಅ ಪಿಕ್ಚರ್ ಈಕ್ವಲ್ ಟು 1000 ವರ್ಡ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಸಾವಿರ ಶಬ್ದಗಳಿಗೆ ಒಂದು ಚಿತ್ರಪಟ ಸಮಾನವಾಗುತ್ತಂದರೆ, ಯಾವುದೋ ಒಂದು ವಿಷಯವನ್ನು ಹೇಳ್ತೀರಿ, ಆ ವಿಷಯವನ್ನು ಹೇಳಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ನಾನು ಆ್ಯಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಯು ಆರ್ ಶೋಯಿಂಗ್ ಎನಿ ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟ್. ಸಿ, ವಿದೌಟ್ ಯೂಸಿಂಗ್ ಟೀಚಿಂಗ್ ಏಡ್, ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಯು ಕಂಪೇರ್, ಜಸ್ಟ್ ವಿದೌಟ್ a lesson without teaching aids, a lesson with teaching aid, because student can easily understand, because you make it more easier, that lesson, that your appropriation, because you are making some interest in the classroom, interesting, rising of interest in the classroom. And the best thing is presentable, exactly, which is one of the best presentable. Because students' participation is very important, because whenever you are there in the classroom, see, there are plenty of students are making more than 50 or 60 or 70 students are there, but no one is following you. Try to understand. Just try to think. You have 100 questions, but no single answer. Then what happens? You have 100 questions, but at least 50 answers. Somehow. Next time I can improve myself, he says, or she says. That means, when you are using TLM, teaching learning materials in the classroom, students can easily understand the concept, what actually you told, what actually you taught in the classroom. And the final one is called the skill of closure. Summarizing. Just follow up and further references. Because without a reference, you cannot do a lesson. Because, see, try to understand. Books, references, books, texts. Sometimes nowadays we are following some web links. So without reference, we cannot do lesson. ಯಾಕಂದರೆ ಒಬ್ಬ ಮನುಷ್ಯನಿಗೆ ತನ್ನ ಜ್ಞಾನ ಏನಿದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ಆ ಜ್ಞಾನ ಬಂದಿರೋದು ತಾನು ಹುಟ್ಟಿದಾಗನೇ ಬೆಳ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬಂದಿರುವಂಥ ಜ್ಞಾನ ಅಲ್ಲ. ಪರಿಸರ ಮತ್ತು ತಾನು ಓದುವ ಹಲವಾರು ಪುಸ್ತಕಗಳು, ಮತ್ತೊಬ್ಬರೊಂದಿಗೆ ನಾವು ಬೆರೆಯುವಂಥ ನಮ್ಮ ವಾತಾವರಣ, ಜಸ್ಟ್ ವಿ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಕಮ್ ಅಕ್ರಾಸ್ ಟು ಸೋ ಮೆನಿ ಪೀರ್ ಗ್ರೂಪ್ಸ್, ವಿ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಕಮ್ ಅಕ್ರಾಸ್ ಟು ಸೋ ಮೆನಿ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೀರಿಯನ್ಸಸ್. ಸೊ ದೀಸ್ ಆರ್ ಟೋಟಲ್ ಈಸ್ ಈಕ್ವಲ್ ಟು our knowledge. That means, so these are the teaching skills. So it's all about now very brief introduction of teaching. So in my next period, I will just go and teach you the concept of micro teaching in my next period. Have a nice time. Take care of yourself. Good day. Once again, this is Professor KV Hirewadeyar.